Yes. Just getting the recording going.
Start the webinar now.
Welcome, everyone. We're just going to get started in 1 minute. Thank you for joining us, and thank you again to our panelists for being here to talk about the water quality in Santa Monica Bay, how it's being monitored, and just what kind of mitigation work is happening moving forward.
Yeah, she's on. Sorry, I got disconnected there for a minute. Can you guys see me now?
Yes.
Right.
All right. I think we still have a few people joining, but looks like we're at a good place to start. Happy Earth Day, everyone. And Councilwoman, would you like to start off with some brief remarks?
Sure, Jacob, thank you so much, everyone. Jacob is my senior advisor on my team, and he has just been at the forefront of a lot of these issues and been essential in serving as a liaison to our public safety partners and helping us get organized for this event today. We are very fortunate to be joined by an incredible knowledgeable, diverse panel of subject matter experts this afternoon. Each of our partners who have joined us represents a different and critical piece of the work that is being done to protect the water and the marine life in the Santa Monica Bay. Their work is more critical than ever as we face the downstream impacts of the Palisades fire and an increasingly stressed natural environment. Before we dive into the moderated discussion, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, and then I have a series of kickoff questions that I'd like to get to ask before we open it up to each of our community members to get their questions answered. I live in Venice, and I am in and around our coastal communities every day. I am seeing with my own eyes the impacts, especially of the most recent wet weather incidents post-fire. And I think there is absolutely no denying the impact that this is having on our wildlife. And I'm sure, going to hear some heartbreaking stories this evening. I know a lot of us have seen with our own eyes what is happening. And so I know a lot of you are as equally concerned and as devastated as I am, and I know we are all. But I want to start by introducing my friend and my colleague, Tracy Quinn, the executive director from Heal the Bay. Tracy, obviously, Heal the Bay has been a longtime leader in ocean advocacy and water testing. Really, really glad to have you here this evening. So why don't you introduce yourself and the work that you and Heal the Bay are already doing on this important issue?
Sure. Thank you for having me. And thank you for your leadership. But, I think it's important for the community to know that, that you care so deeply about this. And in the immediate aftermath of the fires, Councilwoman Park reached out to Heal the Bay and to me to ensure that we were aware of what was happening, within the burn area to areas where, we wouldn't otherwise have access. And so I'm grateful to you for sharing with us some of the threats that that we wouldn't have otherwise been aware of, and for your engagement and your deep care for this issue. Heal the Bay is an environmental nonprofit. We've been around for 40 years, and I think one of the things that we are best known for is translating really complicated water quality data into easy to understand report cards. On our app, we provide water quality data, namely bacteria data, for 450 beaches. It's near real-time data, and you can get a sense of the quality of the beaches on a scale of happy to sad faces. And so I think that's much more easy to understand than seeing 1,000 MPNs per milliliter or something that might be a little more challenging for the public. But we were also uniquely suited in that capacity to be able to look at the water quality and the impacts from these fires, and be able to translate that and provide information to the public on what that means for their health and for the health of the marine life that call our beautiful bay home. So I can pause there, and then I do have some slides at some point where I can share a little bit about the water quality data that we collected. And I know that we're joined here by Jenny Newman from the Regional Water Quality Control Board, who has also been doing some water quality testing that aligns very closely with what we've been finding in ours. So.
Great. So Tracy, I'm going to have you hold on to the slides for just a minute as we introduce our other panelists, and then I want to come back and talk about what your and your team's key priorities are, and then we will walk through those slides. But next, let's go over to my other friend, John Warner, who's the Executive Director of the Marine Mammal Care Center. The work that you do is vital, and it's so important. We see what you are doing out there every day to help save as many of our impacted coastal marine mammals as you can. John, you are out there on the front lines responding to these animals in distress. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing and who you are and what Marine Mammal Care Center does.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tracy. I want to echo what Tracy said, lots of Tracy's, in just your leadership and your voice. It's a very powerful one that you've been using to bring light to some of these issues that we're all facing. And I know with the marine mammals in particular, and appreciate that very much. And Heal the Bay and everyone else on the panel, thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's you were talking about happy and sad faces, Tracy. I'd say this is a sad face moment for marine mammals, unfortunately. I think those of us who live on the coast are seeing them in record numbers stranding and sick on the beaches. And what people are witnessing is really emotionally difficult to watch, anywhere from sea lions seizing, foaming at the mouth and very much in distress, to these sea lions are also pregnant this time of year and they're aborting their fetuses on the beach at our hospital. They can't recover until that fetus is passed, but it's heartbreaking to watch. And now, of course, dolphins, and the dolphins have been really a new element to these domoic acid blooms, and we're seeing them strand and die in record numbers. There's no recovery for dolphins. So it is a mortality event, plain and simple. And people are seeing that every single day. And the last week it's picked back up. So we had a 2-week period of dolphin strandings, went down. We thought, okay, this is past, and it is now spiking and greater in number than what we were seeing at the beginning of this event. So it's really throwing some curveballs at us in terms of precedent. Just every day is a different scenario, and we don't know when this thing will end, but we're going into week 10 as of Thursday, and that is 2 weeks longer than the longest bloom before. So this is continuing. People have lots of questions we're here to answer. And at the heart of this, I want to say Happy Earth Day. It really sounds like the wrong thing to say, but what I want to remind people, and I think we all live by this, is that when we put our collective and individual minds to solving a problem, we have a history of always meeting that moment. And I think in the world we're living in right now, where everything feels daunting, and as I say, I want to hide under my covers most of the mornings when I wake up, that's the absolute opposite of what we need to do. And we are powerful individually and powerful collectively. And time again, we have shown that. And that is the true optimism by which I approach every single day. And am able to deal with the sadness, and same with my team. So we want everyone to use their voices. Remember that they're powerful and more necessary than ever. And that's how we're going to celebrate Earth Day for the next 50 years with a smile on our face.
John, thank you for that. And your chronic optimism gives me hope, especially when what we're seeing with our own eyes is, as you pointed out, incredibly devastating. I've had the opportunity to speak to our lifeguards as well, and they have confirmed the issues with the dolphins. There's just nothing that can be done, and they've had to euthanize those animals. We're seeing the impacts on our local seabirds as well. So it's not just our pinniped friends, it is literally everyone that lives in and depends on our marine environment. So John, we're going to come back and talk a little bit about how water quality factors into what you're seeing, and what a domoic acid algal bloom is, and what we might be able to do about it. But with that, I want to turn it over to Cecilia and whoever else may be here from LA Sanitation to introduce themselves. I'd like to hear from them a little bit. Cecilia, your team manages a vast system that directly impacts water quality in the Santa Monica Bay. So can you tell us a little bit about LA Sanitation's response and monitoring efforts? And I don't have everybody in my Brady Bunch set up, so if it's not Cecilia, whoever it is that we have from LA San. Anyone from
And
LA.
Councilwoman, yeah, it looks like the representatives from LA Sanitation are not with us yet, so hopefully they will be joining us before we finish.
Okay, fantastic. Maybe you can give them a nudge and remind them that we started at 4 o'clock. And if they'd like to join us, we'll be here waiting for them. With that, I am going to move over to Jenny Newman, the regional manager of the LA Regional Water Quality Control Board. Jenny, the role that you guys play is an absolutely vital regulatory role. Can you just give an introduction and tell us a little bit about your team's recent work in addressing some of the post-fire pollution and regional oversight?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and happy Earth Day, everyone. So the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board, as soon as the fire started, initiated several events related to monitoring. We began working with Los Angeles County Public Health to monitor ocean water quality, and we monitored 12 beach sites, as well as some storm drain and creek outfalls. And we analyzed for metals, nutrients, polychlorinated biphenyls, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are all chemicals that are found in runoff after fires. We sampled several times. We sampled January 22nd before the first rain event, January 27th after the first rain event of the season, also February 6th, 18th, and March 13th. And we've posted the data and an analysis of our data on our website, www.waterboards.ca.gov/Los Angeles. We also conducted sediment and beach sand sampling, again, for chemicals that are associated with fire, heavy metals, PCBs, PAHs, and we sampled at 11 beaches and storm drain and creek outfalls for the whole bay. The sampling took place February 25th to 27th, and we just posted the data and our analysis on our website as well. We plan to go out and sample again, both ocean water quality and beach sand, the end of April, so that we'll have the results and the analysis back before the Memorial Day weekend. And then the last effort that we've been undertaking is we've contracted with the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project to coordinate all the monitoring that's being done by our agency, as well as all other government agencies and nonprofits and academic institutions. And that will include not just public health lens, but an environmental lens as well. And that coordinated group is also working with LA County Public Health on their integrated data sharing website. So we are generating and also coordinating and collating a lot of data.
Jenny, thank you for that. That's great. And when we come back, I'm really like to dive into on what the results have shown so far. And we'll tie that into Tracy and a conversation with her as well about what Hilda Bay is seeing as well. I want to now ask Warren Ontiveros with the County Beaches and Harbors to introduce the work that you guys are doing on this topic. I know you're out there every single day and seeing this with your own eyes too. So why don't you introduce what you guys have been up to for us?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Councilwoman. It's a privilege to be here with my esteemed colleagues. The County of Los Angeles Beaches and Harbors maintains 18 beaches from Malibu to San Pedro, including Will Rogers and Dockweiler State Beaches, which are managed by the county under an agreement with the city of LA, who has leased those beaches from the state of California. They are state beaches, and our department does the beach management. The operations and maintenance of the beaches falls under our purview, which is essentially a grounds maintenance and custodial maintenance type operation, as well as management of public parking lots, public access ways, and concessions. So when you see those tractors on the beach in the early mornings, raking the sand to remove debris, remove trash, pick up the trash from the trash barrels, which have those iconic can the trash posters on them. Those are our employees, and they have very large areas to work with. So a lot of that work is done mechanically, and there are some physical limitations to what can be accomplished through those activities. You know, bigger pieces of trash and debris are picked up by that equipment. Our crews do go out and they pick up other debris when they can reach it. If it washes ashore, but very much we are a large scale beach operator. We rely on equipment, and we essentially our scope begins and ends at the sandy beach. And I'm very grateful to be here on Earth Day to answer any questions. Back to you, Councilwoman.
Warren, thank you so much. We do see the work that you're doing out there every day. And my hope is that in my lifetime, we can get to a point where we don't have to go rake the trash off the beach every day. And I noted what you said about your machines capture the larger pieces. It doesn't account for the microplastics and the little bits that are embedded in the sand, and a much different challenge. But I think it is a time to reflect that our oceans and our beaches are the repository for the watershed from the entire region. So even on a normal day, in a normal storm, all of that toxic garbage and pollutants and oils and chemicals and trash and storm drains and gutters move through our systems. We certainly see that through Ballona Creek, and all of that garbage ends up right back on our local beaches. And so you guys do a tremendous lift for us in keeping those areas clean. But I think this is also a really important moment in time for us to give significant thought to how we manage the watershed for the century ahead, because this simply cannot be how we continue to do things. With that, I would like to now move over to Brett Morrow. He is an environmental health specialist with LA County Department of Public Health. Brett, are you here? You're not in my brain.
And Brett didn't, I have pinged Brett as well.
Yeah.
He is not with us at this moment.
Okay, then we are going to move over to Dr. Noel Held, who is an environmental scientist at USC. Dr. Held, you have been on the front lines, and USC has been an incredible partners to local communities following these devastating fire events. So I really appreciate that continued collaboration and engagement and work that you are doing on behalf of all of us. Your job really is to help us understand the science behind the impacts. So maybe you can introduce yourself and talk to us a little bit about what you are currently studying with regards to the Bay's current health.
Absolutely. Thanks. It's so great to be here with this really awesome group of people and an honor for me. So yeah, my name is Noelle Held. I'm a professor of marine and environmental biology at USC. And so we're academic scientists. And I think, as Tracy said, our role is to help provide more detailed information that might be really difficult or impossible for other groups to acquire. And so my background is in ocean chemistry and ocean microbiology. And so we've been applying the techniques that we use to study the ocean system more broadly. Soon after the fires, my group started sampling at Santa Monica Pier and other area beaches. We sampled from January 25th all the way through the present and plan to continue this indefinitely. And we are looking for changes in ocean water chemistry and also ocean biology with a particular focus on microbes in the ocean. The reason we focus on the microbes is we think of them as the canary in the coal mine. So they're the first things that will change if there's something wrong happening in an ecosystem. And then also, as we're seeing, the microbes themselves can have really dramatic effects. So harmful algal blooms are started by microbes, caused by microbes. And so we're looking into sort of causes and consequences of changes in those microbial populations. And our role in academic science is that we can provide a really holistic picture with the type of data that we acquire and really looking at what's happening overall in the ecosystem.
Dr. Held, thank you for that. And we'll open this up to a conversation about the Domoic algal bloom in just a minute so that folks can understand what it is, what might contribute to it, and what, if any, impacts or mitigation efforts may exist for us at the moment. But one final introduction, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Nathaniel Winder. I apologize if I have not pronounced that correctly.
And the Lieutenant Colonel is also not able to join us, so we can go right back to
Okay, great. Well, then I'll just give an update on his behalf since he's not here. The Army Corps is finally in the process of clearing the 327 homes that burned along PCH in Malibu, north of Coastline Drive. Tracy, one of the things that you and I did early on after the fire was get in the car together and go drive around. I had some things I wanted to show you and some things I was highly concerned about. And you and I walked some of those properties along PCH. And I think a lot of what we saw there could be described as extremely concerning as best. And getting that toxic mess up off the coastline and up off of PCH has been a top priority. And I have publicly conveyed that to FEMA and the Army Corps. So I am glad that that work is in progress. I wish it had happened on day 1 instead of day 98 or whenever it was that we started that. Personally, for me, just the visuals of sick sea lions looking for refuge in toxic rubble is one of the most heartbreaking, devastating, awful things that I have seen in the aftermath of all of this. So we are glad that the Army Corps is getting that work done. I think the question remains open. How much damage has already been done? And what, if anything, can we do about it? So I think that is everybody that I wanted to introduce. So I want to kick it back over to you, Tracy, and have you go over your slides with us. And let's talk about some of your key priorities and the water testing and the work that you've been doing.
Sure. So, Jacob, are you gonna, you have the slides, right?
Yes, I'm sharing those right now.
Great. So thank you for the opportunity. You know, we were really lucky in that you know, obviously we have a team of scientists who go out and do water quality testing throughout the year. And so we were, although we did have to gear up because these were brand new contaminants, and certainly there were a lot more public health risks to going out to do the water quality testing here after the fires. But in the immediate aftermath, we were invited by the LA lifeguards to go behind the burn area and to make sure that we were able to provide input on potential threats to the ocean, as well as to be able to take back information and share to the public some of what we were seeing and what was happening along the coast, so that folks could be better informed, because there wasn't a lot of information that was coming out. Again, you know, this was an unprecedented event, and I think one of the things that's been made really clear from this is that no one was prepared for an immediate response to an urban conflagration like we saw with the Palisades fire and with the Eaton fire. And, you know, in order to protect the public health of the residents, but also to protect our coastal waters and our marine life. So if you want to go ahead and share the next screen. So there are a couple of roles that, you know, we're playing here. I think, you know, in the immediate aftermath, we did everything we could, including opening up our aquarium for free science camps for impacted families. So parents had a safe place to drop their children. And so they could go and, you know, get housing and go to disaster relief. But, you know, since then, we've really focused on the science and the data and the stuff that's in our wheelhouse. So our wheelhouse, sorry. So really focusing on how are we going to be able to make sure that we're getting data and information out to the public, and, you know, not just sharing lab reports, but also sharing analysis of the data so that folks really understand the risk to their public health. We've also been you know, caring for federally endangered tidewater gobies that were rescued from the Topanga Creek. And we are one of only 2 organizations that have been authorized to do a captive breeding program, so that once it's safe, we can return these endangered species back to their home. But a big focus of what we'll be talking about today is our post-fire ocean water quality testing. So you can go to the next slide. As Jenny spoke to earlier, we similarly tested for bacteria, turbidity, PCBs, PAHs, PFAS, benzene, heavy metals. And the one thing where we differed from the regional board and from the Department of Public Health is that our testing also included beryllium, which is, we'll have meeting later on. But, you know, this was very different testing. And I think one of the things that I think has been really challenging is that we had, all of us, you know, Heal the Bay, the regional board of public health, had to go out and kind of figure out what are the things that we're likely to see after a fire like this, and how do we, you know, go about doing the testing and putting together this sampling protocol. It was really important for Heal the Bay early on to make sure that we got testing done before the first rain, so that we could really understand the impact from the ash deposition. So, you know, when the storms or when the fires happened, we were very lucky that there was a scientific boat, a research boat offshore, that had unfortunately observed ash coating the ocean surface up to 100 miles offshore. So we knew that there was the potential for significant impact from just the ash deposition alone. And we really wanted to be able to capture that in our water quality testing. We then went back out after that first flush rain, which we had in January, about 25th, 26th. We went back out and we tested after that. The first flush storm, again, this was the first rain we'd had in almost a year. So this was going to be bringing pollutants from across the watershed, you know, as far away as Pasadena, and flushing that out into our system or out into the bay. And we really wanted to capture what is the impact from that first rain, and how is that exacerbating some of the things that we were seeing from the ash deposition. And then while we weren't able to get out, sort of the third major pollutant loading event to our bay was that February 13th, that storm that kind of culminated in intensity on February 13th. Luckily, the Department of Public Health and the regional board were out there and got testing on February 18th, which I think Jenny will speak to. But, you know, these were the big 3 pollutant loading events. And then we also have, as Councilwoman Park noted, the 327 homes along the coast, many of whom were built within the high tide line. And that means that when they burned, that debris was sitting within where the ocean could come in. And every day at high tide, that the ocean was lapping some of those contaminants out into the ocean. So we really wanted to make sure that our testing could provide a comprehensive understanding of the influence of these different types of pollutant loading events. Next slide. Our testing consisted of 10 sites. So we chose 2 sites north of the burn area in Malibu. Currents in Southern California off the Santa Monica coast generally flow south. They don't universally flow south, but they generally flow south. So these were sort of control sites that maybe would have had some ash deposition because the winds were blowing in that direction for part of the time when the Palisades was burning, but could also serve as control sites because any pollutants coming off of the burn area would generally flow south. We then looked at 5 testing sites within the burn area, starting at northern part near Las Flores and Carbon Beach, and then going down to the Rustic Canyon outfall. Now the Rustic Canyon outfall is actually technically south and outside of the burn area, but it collects water and stormwater from most of the structures that burn. So most of that sort of watershed area will drain through Rustic Creek. We also looked at three sites that were south: Santa Monica Pier, Dockweiler, and Malaga Cove. So we'll go to the next. As I'm sure Jenny might speak to as well, determining health risk was really challenging. There were a couple factors that made this so tough, and I think I did see a question in the Q&A about why does it take so long to get some of this information out. So first and foremost, a lot of the contaminants that we're looking at for the fire are things that just take a really long time for a lab to process. So we can get them the data same day, but when you're looking at PFAS and PCBs and some of these other things, it can take several days to several weeks just to get that data back from the labs. And then we have to figure out, what does it mean? We don't have baseline data for a lot of these contaminants. We're not out in the ocean. No government agencies are out in the ocean testing for these contaminants. So we didn't know what was out there before. We had nothing to compare it to. And then as far as understanding if, what the health risk was for humans who are going out and swimming and surfing, we also don't have recreational risk thresholds or recreational health limits for a lot of these contaminants as well. So we had to determine, what are we going to compare this data to so that we can understand the relative health risk. So for human health, we looked at the California Ocean Plan, which has human health limits, but that is for fish consumption. And then we looked at drinking water standards, but drinking, no one's going out into the ocean and drinking 64 ounces of water. So that's, those aren't great markers, but those are much more conservative numbers. When you're determining risk for human health, you're looking at a couple different factors. So you're looking at, the length of exposure or the intensity of exposure, the method of exposure. Are you ingesting it, inhaling it? Is it skin contact? And those different things will affect, how high of a concentration that you can tolerate or will cause a risk to your health. So if something does not exceed a drinking water limit, we can generally assume it's pretty safe for you to get out there and swim and surf. When we looked at our data, I think the next slide should say PAHs and beryllium, if we got the right version here. Yes. So after looking at the 116 contaminants, there were only 2 that exceeded either of the 2 human health limits we looked at. One was a grouping of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons that together exceeded the human health limits for fish consumption. And we also saw exceedances of that human health limit for beryllium. This is something that was unique to the Heal the Bay testing because the testing performed by the Department of Public Health and did not include beryllium in their analysis. So that is why you won't see that in some of the data from public health. But we did see elevated levels of these 2 parameters. And that meant that we need to do some further investigation to understand if either of these were going to pose a a health risk from swimming and surfing. We reached out to the regional water board, who had been working with toxicologists and had shared with us an EPA tool. And through some further investigation, we determined that, or the experts determined that the risk threshold for the two of these compounds was significantly higher than what we were seeing in the ocean water quality. And again, the ocean water quality that we were looking at, the 2 dates that Heal the Bay tested, and looking at the data collected by the Department of Public Health and Regional Water Quality Control Board, should be representative of the worst water quality that we would see during the last 3 to 4 months. Also, we'll go to the next slide. So this is sort of Heal the Bay's recommendations, that looking at that area, it's generally should be safe for recreational use for swimming and surfing. I believe the specifics that were used to come up with the calculations were 4 hours of water contact at a time for up to 120 days. Now we're saying that folks should be cautious or should avoid swimming and surfing in front of the burn areas, and in front of those 327 homes that burned. And that is because the Department of Public Health has issued an advisory that it's unhealthy or unsafe to be within 250 yards of that debris and of debris removal activity. And so you are likely to be swimming and surfing within 250 yards of shore. So we don't recommend that you go within that area, that you stay south of Montana Ave in Santa Monica. And predominantly for that debris removal activity. Next slide. I would just note also that, you can go back one. I would just also note that we are concerned about the potential for additional debris and other contaminants to end up in the ocean from the debris removal activity. As Councilwoman Park noted, it is of the utmost urgency that we remove that debris as soon as possible, because that is one place where we are continuing to get contaminants entering the ocean. But that debris removal activity also provides the opportunity for a temporary increase in contaminants entering the water, because it's really challenging. PCH is significantly higher than the sand area where that debris sits, and it just presents a logistical challenge for debris removal. So I wanted to note that as well. I believe that Jenny from the regional board will be speaking to the sand, water, and sediment water quality. I wanted to limit my presentation to data actually collected by Heal the Bay, but I did just want to note that we have provided some feedback on the data that was collected there. I think there are a couple different parameters where we believe there needs to be further testing and further analysis before we can just sort of give the full green light to recreating on our beaches. And so because of that, we are saying we would generally recommend avoiding if you're with children or pets, areas between Carbon Beach and Santa Monica State Beach at Montana Ave, and using extra caution when visiting the beach, because of both the potential for the chemical contamination, which again, this is out of an abundance of caution. Generally, the data looks like it's below risk thresholds for human contact, but because we want to see a little bit more data when it comes to the arsenic and when it comes to Chrome-6, we're just, out of an abundance of caution saying that maybe we avoid those areas for now. But we do think south of Montana Ave, it should be pretty safe for recreation. But I think just a general rule of thumb is, make sure your kids aren't eating the sand. I know it's something that young kids, will they'll often throw a handful of sand in their mouth or drop it over their head. Maybe for now, I would keep an eye on your kids and pets and make sure that they're not touching physical debris or ingesting or inhaling the sand for now. And I think there'll be a further discussion on that. And then I'll just briefly talk a little bit about what we're seeing with the contamination from our testing on marine health. You can go to the next slide. You can go ahead. So we also compared some of this data to marine health, and we really focused on the marine health limits that were in the California Ocean Plan. Next slide. And we did see that there were several heavy metals that were exceeding limits for marine health. So predominantly beryllium, lead, and chromium were, significantly higher in places that for the maximum level for marine health. And there were, next slide. There were a couple other that exceeded sort of the average limits. Actually, can you go back one? I just wanted to also note something that was a little bit interesting. What we expected to see were significantly higher levels of these heavy metals off of the burn area, specifically Big Rock, and where we were seeing the contaminants, as well as our major outfalls that were discharging debris from the burn zones. So that would really be Las Flores, Big Rock, Topanga Beach, and Will Rogers at Temescal and Will Rogers at Santa Monica Beach. What you may also see here is that we have pretty high, hits of some of these heavy metals at both Santa Monica Pier and at Dockweiler, depending on what you're looking at. That's telling us that we need some further investigation to understand if either the currents are pooling the contaminants in these areas, or maybe if there is another source of these heavy metals that hadn't previously been identified because we hadn't been testing for this before. You want to go 2 slides ahead? So what I did just want to note for folks, and then just one more, is that what do these heavy metals mean? These aren't things that are going to cause an immediate health threat. These aren't going to cause acute illness. So the devastation, this devastating beachings that you're seeing from our wildlife are very unlikely to be directly related to the heavy metals that are contaminating our ocean and are exceeding marine health limits. But these are things that over the long term exposure can lead to, can harm their organ function, can harm fertility and development, and can also actually damage their DNA. These heavy metals will bioaccumulate in the bodies of our sea life, and will increase throughout the food chain as larger fish eat smaller fish, and eventually can make their way to our plate for people who are fishing in the Santa Monica Bay. And, I think there are 180,000 anglers that fish from our piers and our beaches. Many of these folks are bringing that fish home to their families, possibly as their primary source of protein for their families. And so this is something that we definitely want to keep an eye on and continue to research and better understand the impacts to the marine life and also to our local Angelinos who are fishing. So I have a few slides on domoic acid, but you can pull those down since John's here and we'll speak to that. Thank you so much for your time.
Great, and we'll get to the domoic acid and food chain issues and how all of that works in just a minute. Tracy, always happy to have you chime back into it. But I do want to bring Jenny into the conversation to hear a little bit more from the water board in terms of their testing and what they're seeing. And while she's coming on, I'll just mention I just was in Lahaina last week and had the opportunity to observe how the ocean there has recovered, and it's been very remarkable. Of course, all of Lahaina Harbor burned, all of that infrastructure was under the water, burnt boats and other things compounded some of the debris removal and challenges that they had. I was actually there. Front Street is not going to come back. That seawall is coming down. We see the ocean filling in. There is a sandy beach for the first time in Lahaina in a century. There were stingrays swimming where Lahaina Harbor used to be, and the reef is already coming back. So we do know that the ocean has incredible capabilities to heal when given the time and the tools that it needs to do that. And so I am hopeful from seeing some of the progress there. But Jenny, I'd like to bring you into this conversation as well. I know you guys have been out there at the forefront doing a lot of work on this as well. So can you speak to a little bit of the additional testing and some of the other issues that Tracy talked about?
Sure. So the LA Water Board, we sampled like Heal the Bay, we sampled ocean water, we sampled a few more events. I saw in the chat, folks were concerned that it was every 2 months. It did take a while. It took us 3 weeks to get notice of the results out to the public. So it does take a while, but we were conducting sampling weekly, then bi-weekly, and now we're down to monthly, and we're going to go out again before Memorial Day. Our results showed very similar results to Heal the Bay's results. We saw lots of detections of heavy metals, and we also saw some PAHs, polyaromatic or polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which is a chemical that comes after a burn event. And so we compared all that data against human health-based risk thresholds that are set by EPA and the state of California, and arsenic exceeded the threshold at all of the sites we tested in both ocean water and sand. So then what we do when we exceed a threshold is we looked at background levels of arsenic in the area, and we looked at background ocean water data and background soil data for the region. And while the levels of arsenic exceeded the human health risk threshold, they are within background. And so we're going to keep monitoring all the heavy metals and as well as arsenic, keep an eye on it, as well as some of the other non-metal chemicals. But we saw very similar results to what Heal the Bay saw in their monitoring.
Well, that seems to confirm that, there are some issues there. Tracy, glad to hear from you that the, impacts on the wildlife from some of those heavy metals are not likely to have the immediate effect. I hate that there's long-term effects, but it raises the question of the Domoic algal bloom. So John, I would love to have you talk to us a little bit about it. And, Noelle, the scientific perspective on our ocean waters health in this conversation, I think is really important too. So, John, you and I have had the opportunity to work together in the past when we've seen these incidents. This one seems early in the year and much bigger than anything we've seen before, stretching all the way from Santa Barbara area through Southern California. And we've had concerns that these incidents would recur year after year, and that they were likely to get bigger. So what is the scale of this? What is a Domoic algal bloom? And how does it impact the food chain?
Lots of good
wildlife.
questions. So this is by far the worst, which in 2023, that became the worst. This is exceeding that on many, many fronts, which I can talk about. So domoic acid. Domoic acid is a naturally occurring toxin in algae, and it's produced specifically by an algae called Pseudonychia. That naturally occurring algae has shown up in the past in less dramatic, impactful ways on our marine life, and has gotten worse over the last decade or so. So the algae produces the domoic acid toxin. That's what gets into the food chain from little plankton and fish eating that and bigger fish eating that, and eventually up to our apex predators such as marine mammals, birds, etc. It accumulates in the system of the animals. The more they ingest, the more toxin in their body. And that toxin is a neurological toxin. So at the same time as we have domoic acid, I think what people have not heard as much about, but is actually a lot worse. So sorry to everyone who was hoping that this was going to be better news. There's also saxitoxin in our water in high levels, and it doesn't take much of saxitoxin to cause a lot of damage. So this is a multi-toxin event, unprecedented to have it happening at the same time with extremely high toxicity. So the algae, the toxic level of the algae, which I'm sure our colleague from USC could talk a little bit more about specifically scientifically, the levels will change, and the levels right now are extremely high. And so we're seeing that in the ways in which our patients are stranding on beaches. Very comatose, heavy seizure activity that is seen just by looking at them. I think all of you probably have seen that. And it's just heartbreaking. The dolphins, they're seizing. So where people see them out of the water and think they're flopping because they need to breathe, a lot of that is seizure activity, as well as just being outside of their normal environment. So The saxitoxin's even more toxic than domoic acid. We are collecting samples galore of all sorts of things that you would expect to really determine how much of what we're seeing in terms of stranded animals is being caused by domoic acid versus saxitoxin versus a combination of both, to produce these unprecedented stranding numbers that we're seeing, with it really centered on Los Angeles. So then we look at fires. Tracy, you can add anything or correct me if I say anything you would disagree with here, but causation, when it comes to domoic acid, fires don't cause domoic acid. We started to see pseudonychia levels in ocean samples starting in December through January, and we've seen this for the last 4 years without fires. What is probably just from common sense, without data necessarily telling us at the moment, the contributing factors of the fires are probably significant. And nitrates, organic runoff will feed algae. And so we assume that that's going to have an effect on what we're seeing and maybe the scale and scope of the algae growth. Not necessarily causation for the bloom itself, which is a whole different series of natural occurring events: wind, water temperatures that are cold, and a lot of churning up of nutrients from the bottom of our ocean that are really healthy for ecosystems, and speak to why Southern California in particular is so diverse in the ocean life that we have here. So it's a complicated story, but a simple one in terms of these algae blooms are getting worse because of human activity. So it might not be the cause, it's naturally occurring, but exacerbated by our activities, especially around climate change, which is a big item in and of itself. But warm surface temperatures, acidification, I liken it to putting it on steroids, these algae blooms. And then, of course, runoff from rain events is always a problem here because of the sheer amount and volume of runoff that goes in from these not frequent enough rains that we do get. So all of that contributes to this. All of it is making this just the worst we've seen. The number of animals, the health, the state of the health of the animals is by far worse. The mortality of both the dolphins, of course, is 100%, but our sea lion friends, that is much higher mortality rates than we have seen from past blooms. We're doing what we can to rehabilitate and release animals when they're ready, but it's a fewer percentage. It's a less percentage number than we've ever seen, and it's heartbreaking. And then, of course, what does it do to the population in the long run? Another question we don't know, but there's a lot of research to be done. So that's with the organic runoff. The toxic runoff, I think Tracy covered very well, and what we are really going to be looking at with our animals and all the samples we're collecting. So we're collecting more samples than we have any amount of resources to process, which is another problem to overcome. But you're talking blood, serum, liver, kidney, blubber material, urine, feces, milk, and amniotic fluids, a lot of fetuses, a lot of animals that we've done necropsies on, looking for heavy metals, pesticides, industrial chemicals, algal toxins, to really look at both what happened before. So we have samples that will tell us baselines, what's happening immediately after the fires, and then what's happening over the next 3 to 5 years, hopefully, if we can get the research dollars behind this. And this is coming at a time when NOAA is being cut back, and we're not able to access funding from them or lab tests from them. So really going to be looking for a community solution with our university partners, scientific organizations, private philanthropy, hopefully government support as well, to really answer these questions both now and in the long term.
John, thank you so much for the work that you continue to do. And, to folks who are tuning in for this today, so much of the work that you do is driven by private philanthropy and donations. I know that your care center is absolutely overwhelmed with patients. You have costs for staffing, medication, food, the interventions you do out at the beach, going out to collect these animals. Where could we direct residents who may want to get involved with your organization or learn more about how they could potentially contribute to the incredible work that you do?
Thank you for that very much, Tracy. And yes, it's overwhelming, and we're doing everything we can to care for all of the animals that are stranding, or at least learn from why they passed away, to give that death greater meaning for other animals out there. So marinemammalcare.org/donate to make a donation/volunteer. And we need volunteers, we need resources in terms of financial support, and we need people's actions and voices, as I mentioned at my opening remarks. And this is the time for all of that.
All right, so thank you, John. Let's bring Dr. Hurd into the conversation. What says science about these issues that we're seeing in the ocean? What is it that feeds the algae, and what can we do as human beings right now today to change our practices that are contributing to these just devastating events for our marine environment?
Yeah, I guess I would say from a science perspective, I would absolutely agree with everything that was just said by John. So as scientists, when we think about overgrowth of a particular algae, so algae like Pseudonychia are kind of always present in very low amounts in the ocean ecosystem. And the problem is when they can grow too much, and that's when they really take over. And one thing that drives that growth is input of nutrients. And specifically in our part of the world, it's nitrogen. So these are things like nitrates and ammonia, the same stuff you would put on your garden to fertilize it to grow. If you put it in the ocean, it turns out it also helps things to grow. And so there are natural sources of nitrogen to the ocean. We need nitrogen to form the base of the food web to allow helpful microbes to grow. But when you have too much nitrogen or a big input of it that's unusual, that's when you can have what we as scientists call dysbiosis. So a change in the ecosystem that is beyond what would be normally expected. And so what this event with the fire and this harmful algal bloom event have sort of collectively done is really place this highlight on the fact that there are lots of sources of contaminants, but also natural nutrients to the ocean ecosystem. And we live in one of the most populated places on the planet, and yet we still don't have a really great understanding of where these sources of these things come from. But things that we can do today, I mean, we're in a very urban environment, so reducing the use of artificial fertilizers and pesticides, which accumulate in rain runoff and ultimately end up in the ocean, that's a big deal. And it can have a really big impact on the amount of nutrients that enter the local ocean ecosystem and could potentially be contributing to harmful algal blooms, although I think this harmful algal bloom is driven by bigger scale processes that are happening on the global scale. So things like climate change that are changing how the circulation of the ocean happens. And so choices you can make in general to be more environmentally friendly will also help our ocean ecosystem locally as well.
All of it seems so interconnected to me. And maybe it is the fertilizers and the pesticides that drive the algae blooms. Certainly the changing water temperatures and circulation patterns contribute to it. But it seems to me that no doubt all of it, from the plastic to the heavy metals to the garbage that runs through our watershed and ends out in the ocean, all of it has a detrimental impact, and it is incumbent upon all of us, whether it is across government or just who we are fundamentally as people living in a society that actually cares about our ocean and our wildlife, to implement changes to make sure that we are engaging in practices that minimize these impacts. Certainly as, the caretaker of our city's coastal district, and as a resident of Venice who, sees with my own eyes the impacts of these issues every day, this is going to continue to be a top priority for me. And I look forward to continuing to work with our academic partners, our nonprofits, and our government partners to do what we can to address the current circumstances and make better investments for our future and our ocean and its health in the future. Jacob, I could sit here and ask these very wise people questions all day long, but I think if we have a few more minutes, I would really like to open this up to direct questions from our audience. Since they've made the time to be here tonight and hear this information, I want to make sure their questions are getting answered. And I'm not monitoring chat, so.
I answered a bunch of them that were in the chat, just FYI, but I
Great,
also,
thank you,
and I was gonna
Tracy,
say,
'cause I'm
Jacob,
not
the
doing
one
it.
thing I saw consistently in there was like, can Tracy Quinn, can we remove Tracy Quinn from being pinned? So thank you for addressing that one, Jacob.
Absolutely. Yeah, and if any attendees do have any questions that haven't already been answered, please feel free to raise your hand, and we're happy to have some time to, let you ask those questions. And also just to maybe preempt some questions, we will be, this webinar has been recorded, and we will be posting it for everyone afterwards. But if anyone wants to ask a question, they can raise their hand now, and we'll give you a chance to speak. And thank you again, Tracy, for answering some of those questions in the chat.
If there's no hands up, that might be the first time in the history of Everdom that we've had an open mic night and not had questions.
I'm not seeing any hands up.
Oh.
Oh, wait, we do have a couple. So,
All right.
all right. Brian, you should be able to unmute. You can go ahead and ask a question.
Yes, I'm Brian. I'm the administrative assistant for the Tower 26 Ocean Program, and we have a group that meets at Tower 26 and also at Torrance Tower twice a week starting at the end of May. And, our program goes for 6 months. So I'm hearing that these toxins don't affect us unless we eat shellfish. But drip, drip, drip over time, like watering a plant a little bit at a time, it grows. Can these, what's the trend? You must be seeing a trend. Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Provided that there's no more rain. Also, is the water current moving? Is it going to be moving more north, more south? Give us some idea of where we're headed in the next 2 or 3 months.
Right. Tracy, water boards.
Jenny, do you want to go for it?
Sure. So the standards that we compared our data against considered if a person swam in the water 4 hours a day, half the days of a year. And so that's built into the standard we used. So if the water quality is below that standard, then it means that there would be no public health, no human health risk for swimming 4 hours a day every other day. So we built that into the standards we used. And then I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of trends. The first couple events we saw slightly higher levels than now. So they seem to be going down slowly, although they were never at levels that exceeded the human health-based standards, except for, like I said, for the arsenic.
And just to add on to that point, I think for many of the contaminants we looked at, they didn't even exceed drinking water standards. So even if you were sitting out there drinking 64 ounces of water straight from the ocean, the concentrations weren't high enough generally for a lot of those contaminants to cause an issue. Certainly drinking 64 ounces of seawater will cause other issues, but I think just to give an exclamation point to what Jenny said, that the concentrations although we are detecting many of these contaminants, they aren't at concentrations that are likely to cause any sort of health risk. And again, they aren't things that, just like I talked about in the marine health, these are also contaminants that aren't going to cause acute illness. It's not like when we have bacteria exceedances and you could get a gastrointestinal, issue or an ear infection. these are contaminants that over time would potentially increase your risk of a chronic health issue. But at the concentrations we're seeing right now, that's unlikely to happen. And as Jenny mentioned, we expect that to get better over time because the pollutant loading events, the major ones, have already passed, and we don't expect large rainstorms. But even without the fires, generally we would, we advise people to stay out of the water for at least 72 hours after a rain, and to not swim within 100 yards of a storm drain. And we would, those are good rules of thumb for fires as well, or for what we're dealing with right now.
And I would add, I don't think LA County Public Health is on this call, but please continue to consult their website and then also Heal the Bay's report card, which is reporting specifically on bacteria data, which the LA County does that monitoring regularly and may do separate fire-related beach postings related to bacteria levels. So keep looking out for those postings by LA County Public Health and Heal the Bay.
And just a final note on that too is, and I saw in the chat, many of you want continued testing and you want more frequent testing. Heal the Bay is actively seeking funding and applying for funding to be able to continue to do testing. If that's something that you would like us to continue to do, please support our work or encourage other people, or if corporations or other things that can do partnerships that can help to support this work. This testing is not cheap. It was, our initial set of testing cost us $3,000 a sample. So just the sampling alone cost our organization $60,000. And that doesn't include all of the staff time and new gear that we had to purchase to be able to go out there and do it. And so that wasn't that wasn't anything that we had budgeted. It wasn't anything that we had funding for. We did it because we knew it needed to be done and it was the right thing to do. But if you would like to see us to be able to continue to do that work, we need some additional support.
And since I made this plug for John and the team over at Marine Mammal Care Center, I want to do it for you, Tracy, as well. You, like them, are out there on the front lines of this every day. And, Heal the Bay is a trusted partner. And I think the work that you do both on the advocacy side and the education side is absolutely vital. And the hard reality here, folks, is that government cannot address all of these challenges on its own. This is truly an all hands on deck effort. And so if you'd like to support Heal the Bay and their incredible work, Tracy, they should go to, is it healthebay.org? Healthebay.org. Just an incredible partner and always a great place to invest. I wanted to just give voice to one of the frustrations that I have personally, and I have certainly heard this from constituents. Mitigation measures are really hard to come by in circumstances like this. Oil spills, there are interventions and strategies and things that can be done to clean up the water. It's never great, it's not perfect, and those impacts remain for a long, long time. But with chemicals and heavy metals, we just don't have those same types of protocols in place once material hits the water. Probably all of you are aware of some of the landside mitigation efforts we tried to do, the K-rails and whatever those things are called, the mulch bags that absorb things, water and pollutants supposedly before they go into our storm drains. But we all saw what happened after the big storm drain with the mudslides and the debris and all of that was deposited through Rustic Creek, right literally out to the ocean. We all saw the birds swimming in it, and we're seeing all of this with our own eyes. So, what can we do, if anything, to try to remove these from the ocean? Or is this something it's just going to take time for the water to heal itself if it can?
This is, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jenny.
I think we need to continue to monitor and track the concentrations in the sediment and in the sand and in the animals that live in the bay, and develop mitigation measures based on the data. I think now we're still learning about the extent of the problem. We did what we could, like you said, landslide to prevent the burnt material from getting out into the ocean. And I think that the cities and the county did a great job in that effort. And now we need to monitor and assess the situation to determine what, if any, mitigation measures are necessary for the bay itself.
And I think part of mitigation measures also is the infrastructure itself. And, you know, we don't have partners from the Wright County departments here to answer some of these questions, but the watershed management that we have in place currently feels antiquated. And it seems to me that there are potential upstream solutions that can help mitigate some of this. And as we are looking at recovery throughout the Pacific Palisades and Topanga and Malibu, the opportunities to rethink how we route runoff and what types of catch basins and other interventions may be available before it ever hits our beaches and oceans is really important as well. And I'm just going to make one other plug since LA San was not able to join us for the meeting. In addition to all of the incredible environmental programming and work they do, I got to make a plug for the sewer system and Hyperion. I think a lot of you know that we already have some fragile infrastructure when it comes to wastewater. And sometimes when we have backups with trash and pollution and other things that have entered our sewer systems, that can cause the bulkheads to overload. And we definitely do not want to see a sewage discharge event. But one small thing folks can do is keep stuff out of the sewers that doesn't belong in it. Do not flush flushable wipes. And even if they say they're flushable, they're not. They clog up the bulkheads at Hyperion and they're disgusting. Please don't flush those. Feminine products, needles. Those are things that need to be disposed of properly. So just everybody be mindful of that as well. I know we are a little bit over our time and I want to be respectful. Jacob, if there are any final questions, I would say maybe let's take one or two more at most, and then we will wrap up and say goodbye and thank you to our friends and colleagues who joined us this evening.
Absolutely. We do have several more folks with their hands raised now. What I will say is that if for anyone whose questions they feel were not answered or you didn't able to get to, please email our office at councilmember.park@lacity.org. And if we don't have the answer ourselves, we will work with our many partners that are here or were not able to join us to get you an answer. So with that, let's ask one last question. Allow one last question from Oliver Langen. If you want to ask a brief question, and then we will wrap up.
Yes, sorry, I'll make this fast. I operate a summer camp here in the Pacific Palisades with Beller Bay Club, and several of our parents are coming to us asking about our protocol for water quality testing this summer. In the past, we've used the county's site, and we only go in the water if it meets the state standards. However, based on what you guys have said, I think Jenny talked about it, but that's not necessarily testing for the same, the new concerns that are posed by the fire. So is there a new site or a different place we should be looking on a day-to-day basis as we decide whether or not campers should go in the water this summer?
You can still look at the LA County Public Health website. I was just explaining that sometimes they do postings related to bacteria and sometimes they do postings related to fire-related contaminants specifically, and both of those are on the same LA County Public Health website.
And Oliver, you can reach out to us at Heal the Bay and we might be able to help make sure that we can see if we can help get you the information that you need. Particularly if we can do some additional testing and more frequent testing. But if you want to reach out to me or at Heal the Bay, we can help you figure out how to keep the kids safe.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for your time this evening. I know that this is a conversation that has been very, very important to this community. I know for all of us how much we love our ocean and our marine animals, and I know that we are all jointly vested in making sure that we do everything within our professional capacity, our political power, and our individual and collective actions as residents in the community to try to protect and preserve our Santa Monica Bay. I know that we have a long road ahead, and I know that there are still many concerns, and I also recognize that this continues to be a dynamic and changing situation with a lot of different contributing factors and elements and causes. I am heartened by the fact that there are so many incredible people and organizations and institutions focused on this work and coming together to share data and have these conversations. So I appreciate you all. We will work to get this recording out so that folks who were not able to join us this evening have an opportunity to hear this information as well. I appreciate you all, and we will look forward to continuing to keep you updated as we get through these unprecedented circumstances here in Los Angeles. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.